Defense. What are the other ways of dealing with enemy waves except for making cannons? Well, one way to do it is to use build cancel for various purposes. For example, you can do it to split the enemy wave in halves or portions. You can send a portion of enemy wave to go into the opposite lane so that those units are engaged in combat with the units of the opposite lane. It's going to be particularly effective when the top lane is going to be a hard counter to the bottom lane in this example. You can see that the units are going to get engaged while the others are going to be free to go where they were going in the first place. Now pay attention to the fact that in this example, the top unit, once no enemy is in place, he or she is going to go down into the lane where it came from. So when is it good time to drag into a pushing lane? Okay, we have a situation here. We see a visible wave on the bottom. My units are going to take some time to spawn. These tanks are going to get raped. Top is well into enemy lane. Top units are not going to make much difference in this lane in the next couple of minutes. So, this is a good scenario for this wave to be pushed or dragged to the top. Now, the anticipated outcome of this defensive maneuver is the following. These guys, some of them, are going to be engaged with the top wave. My spawned units should take care of the tail of this wave. These guys are probably going to get chewed up by those immortals. But the flip side of that is that the enemy units in this lane are not going to be able to stack simply because they don't have any units to deal with. So let's see what happens. I will try to drag these guys to the top. Warhounds are hard countered. Stalker is hard countered. Tanks are hard countered. Here's my worker. Emos have spawned, so didn't have a chance to drag the enemy wave to the top, so I will pick up the trailing wave. And look at that. I had picked up some of the initial wave as well. So I'm going to pick them up and gather them together. What's happening over here? Well, 2 tanks versus 1 immortal, and the Zealot is on my side. Clear victory for the tanks. I'm dragging these guys, which is the meat of that push, into roaches. Now roaches, they're not a good counter to immortals, but at least they will stall these guys out here. And at the bottom, you see my wave have spawned. So this lane is gonna start its push. These guys, well, Zerglings are doing quite a nice job helping out this Colossus do solid damage. Now, I have seen that the Immortals here are going to win the top for now, primarily because I was probably focusing on roaches. So what I did next is I shifted my mid-row to go top. In the event that this wave that I had dragged would move way over here to the our side and create chaos, defeating these roaches, the next set of immortals and an Archon that would have spawned would deal with this wave. Now, interestingly, those immortals were defeated, and here comes my wave. So the outcome of this dragging maneuver, we had successfully defended bottom without the use of nukes or cannons. We had also prevented top wave from stacking up, and now we have quite a bit of a push on the bottom, and we're also having quite a bit of a push on the top. Now, mind you, I'm playing mid. You can see yellow is also playing mid. So we have 2 on 2 people over here, and we have 3 guys on the top. So this wave is going to be 3 on 2. And if yellow makes a mistake of sending his units to the bottom to try to deal with this wave, the top push is going to be even stronger. But that, my friends, are something that mid-row strategy is concerned with. Now, if, however, the top lane is this example, as you can see on the minimap, is only midway through the ramp, what dragging will do is, yes, it will help you defensively, but it will kill down the push on top. So I would recommend using dragging to the opposite lane in this scenario if and only if there's no other means to defend. But what are those other means? Well, one of them is traffic control, and you use build cancel pretty much to separate the wave in your native lane. You cannot prevent trailing units catching up with the primary wave and wiping out defending units altogether. You can also leverage high ground. Watch carefully, as build cancel will allow the cannon and tanks sitting on the high ground to get a cheap free shots at those immortals.
Listen to this week's guest mix out of Tel Aviv. This is Mo Sheik.
There we go, a very clean demo of cannon just getting free shots. As you learn dragging and build cancelling in your practice time, or when you're just picking up the technical facility, it's very common to make an outpost. Simply a building that you didn't cancel in time before it got built. So you have a building in a random place. When you do, keep it, don't sell it. You can leverage it, particularly when it's sitting near the high ground, as in this video. I repair marine buildings and my tanks are getting free shots at those immortals. If, however, you are attacking and your opponent is leveraging the top portion or leveraging high ground, particularly using build cancels or outposts, the simple way to counter this technique is to scan their ramp. There's a scan and emos immediately start to attack tanks previously non-visible to them. When the scan is off, though, they will go back to the outpost. Let's say if there's a bunch of tanks rolling down on your ground and you have one Banshee trying to deal with them, you can use build cancel to stall tanks and allow that Banshee to take care of them. Sometimes the only way to turn the enemy wave is to nuke. And you can leverage dragging to sort of put enemy units together, or even possibly combining bunch of waves together for a solid money nuke. In this example, I have 6 Archons trying to deal with a bunch of Immortals coming in from the top. I think they are with hardened shields at this moment, so I'm going to prevent these guys from occupying my top portion of the map. Now, the second portion of the wave came back trailing, and those Archons are not going to be able to deal with Immortals. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to nuke before Archons are being wiped out. You can also practice dragging with just a single building. You don't need to have 100 minerals to take advantage of this technique. This is going to be a demonstration, an in-game demonstration of holding. So, we have a situation here, a particular setup. We have one player, me, playing on the top lane only, or in the top lane only. We have a bunch of Hydras by WUG, and they are being sent to the bottom lane. So we have 3 on however players are there on the bottom. On the top, we do have some Immortals and an enemy wave. Now, I'm going to take advantage of holding. It will work particularly well when you have control over the whole or entire lane. In this scenario, I have kind of an indirect control of the entire lane because these guys are being sent to the bottom. That means that my push over here on the top is weak. So I'm going to eyeball it very, very closely and figure out, should I hold my units or not? It's probably a good time to hold them because these Archons are going to come out and my wave is going to turn. So all the subsequent units that will be generated will do nothing but let the enemy units stack. So I'm going to cancel production over my units because I don't have control over WUG's units. Or I do. I don't think I did at that time. So I was just holding my units back. You want to do it up until the enemy wave kind of reaches the middle of this lane. Then they're going to take another 30 seconds to reach the upper portion of the ramp. So you're going to want to calculate that your units meet the enemy units somewhere in this area. So let's see what happens. This wave is progressing, but it's not being stacked up too badly. So this time I'm going to release my Immortals and release my whole pack. These guys will need to be traffic controlled so that my Immortals have a chance to spawn and these guys don't occupy the high ground. Actually, I was able to split these guys. So in this particular scenario, I'd had combined 2 techniques together. That is, holding units and splitting units to make the turn easier. Now the switch of the mid-row, and you can see Hydra is going to the top, acted as if this Hydra was released on the top lane as well. As a result, this wave is very, very easy to deal with. And then these guys, I had dragged correctly as this wave was pushing way into the enemy lane, so these units will act nothing beneficial. They will not do any benefit to this push. They will only allow these guys to stack. So distracting or engaging them to deal with these guys was a good idea. As a result, we had taken away some of the units from this push. We had turned around this wave quite easily. And yeah, these guys are not stacking. Mid Hydra. They are now going to help turn these guys around. We have a push here. And this lane is not stacking up. Now, you can see that top is now pushing deep into the enemy line. The question is, should I hold my units or I shouldn't? Well, it's way deep into the game. I'm almost maxed. Actually, I am maxed. And that's Wag. He is maxed. I'm getting closer to being maxed. So, holding your lane, I haven't seen anybody being super successful with it late game. Late game is all about micromanaging heroes and taking advantage of the leverage points that you had set yourself up to prior. So use holding lanes mid to early game and then forget about it late game. Alright, in this game I'm going to explore or demonstrate holding one more time. Now, we have a pretty stacked team on the other side, bunch of players who are professional players. So it's 2 on 4, I believe, yes. Static is from Axios, me from me, and we have a situation that we have a cannon that has 16 kills on it, and I have full control of all units. Now, we had invested into early pylon, we had invested into a cannon, so we also wanted to catch up on income by creating another pylon. We are sending mid-row to the top, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold bottom so that these guys don't chew up our units. What we want to do here is to let the enemy units come to us by holding these guys and let the cannon actually recover its expenses. So let's do just that. You can see that there are no units being produced. Then I'm going to release as these guys come along, and I'm going to leverage this cannon to make the most out of it. So there it is, top is being pushed as you can see on the minimap. Bottom is doing quite fine, and I will use build cancels to go ahead and leverage the high ground, the cannon, and the long distance range of stalkers. So that's the trick. You know, I'm mixing and matching some of the defensive techniques. Stalkers are stacking quite nicely, one might say. So I'm gonna speed things up. We're gonna push these guys out. Yep, we're still pushing. So now I'm gonna do the same thing. I will send my units to the top and I will hold these guys. You will see that soon, you see, no units are traveling on the bottom lane because they're being held from production. They're being cancelled. So what's going to happen? This wave is going to turn my guys quite easily. It's going to accelerate. Look, there's no units. You don't see anything because the fog of war covers them. And I'm going to release, slow things down, and do the same trick. Leverage the cannon, like so. Release these guys and send my mid to the bottom to deal with the enemy wave. So there we go. Got some kills on the cannon. Let these guys spawn, prevent bottom wave from stacking, turn it around, and force the nuke on the top. Now, I made an outpost, and I'm not in a rush to sell it, because it might prove useful for now, and I did screw up, so there's no reason to sell it. It will generate income and it will hold the enemy units. So for now, we're doing fine. These guys go to the bottom. Another wave is gonna go to the bottom as well. And this is probably the time when I'm going to decide that holding units at around 15 minutes is not going to be a viable strategy, so I will throw our opponents off by not holding our units any longer and just proceed with the rest of the techniques of playing the game at our disposal, which is controlling mid-draw, regulating traffic in such a manner that will create an advantage to us. Now, I'm going to go ahead, go to the top and try to make a separation of this wave. Dragging is not a bulletproof technique, but in this scenario it has a viable chance of being very effective. You can see the bottom lane is pushing deep into the enemy wave, so even if I drag these guys to the bottom, they will not weaken the bottom push. So I will go ahead and try to stall. Actually, in this scenario, I'm just stalling the enemy wave on the top by letting these guys catch up and do something at least more or less damaging. They don't have detection, I'm sorry, so you know, I'm doing my best, but we'll see comes out from this defensive strategy. I lost some. We did force a nuke on the bottom, so that was a good thing. Now these guys are being stalled. Will I push them all the way to the bottom? I might. I overdragged here. Clearly I overdragged and my income is running way too high. Didn't push them to the bottom, but we were able to turn the top without resorting to nukes, etc, etc. And you will see holding... I should have probably held these units for at least one cycle, but I didn't. Yeah, I didn't. I got distracted by the heat of the moment. Should have held these guys for one more time. Well, that pretty much sums it up. Remember, there are two sides to a story. One is your technical facility to be able to execute a technique, and the second one is your decision-making process of when to apply it for the best effect. And if somebody asked me a question, what is the best advice I can give? Well, never assume that you're the best player in the game, because this will most certainly lead you to a dissatisfaction and frustration. Enjoy the game, you can always do better, and good luck turning those waves around.